Schizophrenia is a mental disorder that affects around 20 million people worldwide and causes hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and disorganized thinking and/or speech. Signs of schizophrenia usually start showing between the ages of 16 and 30. For some people, it can develop during young adulthood and develop slowly. For others, it may start more suddenly, but no event can cause schizophrenia. It can develop at any age, but the average age of onset is usually in the late teens to early 20s for men and the late 20s to early 30s for women. It's rare for schizophrenia to be diagnosed in a person younger than 12 or someone older than 40. People with schizophrenia often die at a considerably younger age than the rest of the population because of late diagnosis and poor treatment of physical illnesses, side effects of antipsychotic medication, unhealthy lifestyle, and high risk of suicide. The disorder tends to run in families, but no single gene is thought to be responsible. It's probable that different combinations of genes make people more vulnerable to the condition, but having these genes does not necessarily mean you'll develop schizophrenia. Evidence that the disorder is partly inherited comes from the studies of twins. In identical twins, if a twin develops schizophrenia, the other twin has a 1 in 2 chance of developing it too, even if they're raised separately. And if one parent has schizophrenia, then the children have a 10% chance of developing it also. The oldest evidence of a disorder closely resembling schizophrenia can be found in documents dating back to Egypt in 1550 BCE. It used to be believed that the disorder was demonic and caused by being possessed. Stone Age skulls have been found with burr holes drilled, presumably to release evil spirits. The first formal description of schizophrenia as a mental illness was made in 1887 by Dr. Emil Kraepelin. Back then, the treatment consisted of sedating the patients either chemically or through physical restraint, or using shock therapy like insulin, but they stopped doing this in the early 1950s. Today, in order to be diagnosed, a person has to have experienced at least 2 of schizophrenia's symptoms for at least a month. Schizophrenics experience positive symptoms and negative symptoms. Positive symptoms are additions to reality, such as hallucinations like hearing voices, seeing things that aren't actually there. Negative symptoms are feelings that are lacking from schizophrenics, things that are taken away from their reality. The negative symptoms of schizophrenia can often appear several years before someone experiences their first episode of psychosis. This visual, that was also at the very beginning, was made by an anonymous artist with schizophrenia who said that this was one of their most common hallucinations. Every schizophrenic's hallucinations look different. Some people have recurring characters that frequently show up in their hallucinations. Another schizophrenic, Cecilia, has seen the same clown most of her life, who she says looks just like Pennywise from the original It adaptation. Some people hallucinate more realistic things like spiders, which makes it even harder for them to tell if it's real or not. Not all hallucinations are scary, though, especially after medication. Quote-unquote normal-looking, unquestionable people or things can be hallucinated too. It's really important that diagnosis comes as early as possible because leaving schizophrenia untreated can lead to worsening the condition and possibly developing other mental disorders and, in worst case, suicide. But it's hard for many to want to or maybe even know they need to get help because there's a lot of negative stigma around schizophrenia that pins a stereotype on all those who suffer from it being scary, crazy, dangerous individuals who must be violent. More than 69% of people with schizophrenia are not receiving appropriate care, and 90% of people with untreated schizophrenia live in low and middle income countries, which is concerning because it's not curable and requires lifelong treatment, even when or if symptoms have subsided. For these statistics to go down, there needs to be less judgment and more acceptance and support towards those who are affected. While the media, especially movies and entertainment, portrays schizophrenia as scary and evil, people with schizophrenia have the same chance of being dangerous or violent as any other person and are more likely to harm to themselves than to anybody else. And people with schizophrenia are still human who can live successful and loving lives if given the mental health resources they need. Some examples of people who have great accomplishments and successful lives despite having schizophrenia are Aaron Carter, who's a pop star that was big in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Darrell Hammond, who used to be a regular cast member on SNL but is now an announcer for the show, Veronica Lake, who was a popular actress in the 1940s, John Nash, a mathematician who won a Nobel Prize and inspired Oscar-winning film A Beautiful Mind, Zelda Fitzgerald, novelist, socialite, painter, and wife of F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Lionel Aldridge, who was a professional football player and played for the Green Bay Packers and San Diego Chargers.